Dedicated to the survival of American democracy in an increasingly dangerous world, this is Secure Freedom Radio with Frank Gaffney, acted as Assistant Secretary of Defense for International Security Policy under President Ronald Reagan, founder and president of the Center for Security Policy in Washington, D.C., the go-to man for defense and foreign policy issues, joined by the greatest minds in the security policy business, the special forces in the war of ideas at Secure Freedom Radio with Frank Gaffney.
We're back, joined by Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, a man that I have come to admire tremendously as a voice and force for good within the Muslim American community. He has only enhanced his stature in that regard with the publication of a new book, Battle for the Soul of Islam, an American Muslim patriot's fight to save his faith. He is also the founder and driving force behind American Islamic Forum for Democracy and the American Islamic Leadership Coalition. And Zuhdi Jasser, it's always good to have you with us, but most especially as we are now doing some stock taking on what it means that a Muslim Brotherhood president now runs Egypt. Give us your thoughts on, first of all, the role of the Brotherhood at the moment, and what it means that they may have just taken over the most populous Arab nation and one that sits astride the strategic Suez Canal and that has a very impressive American-supplied arsenal at its disposal.
Well, I think this is a large paradigm shift that's happening in the Middle East, and unfortunately, the administration and the West in general has been asleep at the switch, almost like a deer in headlights, without any strategy. The good news is that in the first time around, they only had 25% of the vote. The bad news in the runoff, you basically had a choice between worse and worse, which was the Brotherhood that ended up winning. But at the end of the day, their rhetoric is going to slowly, their rhetoric of appeasement to the secularists, to have a vice president who's Christian, etc., is all going to be window dressing to the fact that they will return to their core ideology. Morsi is a long-time ideologue with the Brotherhood. There's no evidence whatsoever that he's going to abandon any of that. And even in his first speeches, it's been obvious that he's already catering to the core radical Islamist lobby, including the Hamas operatives and the Islamist movements around the Middle East, talking in many, I think, veiled language of sort of a neo-caliphate resurgence, and also in mentioning wanting to bring back the Blind Sheikh from the U.S. And if we even contemplate that, it is going to tell them that we really are going to appease their every wish and give in to basically handing over a man who was financed by bin Laden and is part of the main enemy of the United States. So it's just, these are tough times, and we need strong leaders to identify the ideology we're fighting, and we could have no clearer signals, and yet we're not doing anything about it.
I want to come back to the Blind Sheikh in a moment, Zuhdi Jasser, but just to stay with Mohammed Morsi for a moment, one of the things that he made very clear in the course of the campaign, in keeping, as you say, with the basic tenets of the Muslim Brotherhood, is that he intends to bring Sharia law to Egypt, fully imposing it on he claims to be a leader of all Egyptians. He, I gather, will impose it on all Egyptians. What is your sense of the likelihood of that and its implications?
It's impossible. I mean, the Muslim Brotherhood is founded on Sharia-based Islamic supremacy for the Islamists, and they have never. There's no theology in which they proposed or pushed forth in which there's equal access to law for the Copts, for the Jews, for the non-Muslims that are in Egypt. There's just no tools for that. The only instruments Morsi knows how to use and his Brotherhood know how to use are Islamist instruments that are driven by the clerics of Al-Azhar and others in Cairo. So, and I think one of the other things we need to realize to understand the influence of Morsi in the region, Al Jazeera has not only been in the tank for the Brotherhood for decades, but they have facilitated now. I mean, they have augmented the voice of Morsi from beyond Egypt to the entire Middle East. And you have Qardawi, who is sitting perched in Qatar, giving his weekly show on Sharia and life. And you have this basically bridge between the Gulf states and Egypt now with huge power emerging with Morsi. So I think we need to be careful and look exactly what their strategy is vis-a-vis Israel, vis-a-vis Western interests in the region, And, I think we need to wake up to the threat ideologically of what Morsi represents.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. And just again, to spend a minute on this Blind Sheikh business, Omar Abdul Rahman, as you say, Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, this is a man who has been intimately involved in the threat against us for years. He fulminated and helped inspire and legitimate the first effort to destroy the World Trade Center. You've warned against us even contemplating doing this. We're doing more than that. The Obama administration brought one of his agents, a fellow by the name of Hani Noor Eldin, to the United States, and as you know, engaged in what appear to be some sort of negotiations or consultations or at least discussions with him on this very question of repatriating the Blind Sheikh and perhaps allowing him, they would tell us, to serve his sentence there. Just give us a sense, knowing these Islamists as you do, Dr. Jasser, what would the implications, what would the impact be? Would he stay in jail for one thing? And more to the point, what would it mean to the worldwide effort to impose this doctrine of Sharia on us violently, if possible, through stealthy means, if not?
Yeah, I don't think you can overstate what the implications are of him from one of his first speeches asking for the release, because it shows that they haven't reformed. Because if you look at Hamas's entire operation has been trying to ask Israel over and over to release certain prisoners, terrorists from the jails in Israel, etc. That's their MO, because the lens through which they see life and governance, etc., is through the lens of jihad and through the lens of martyrdom. So Morsi, as much as he says he maybe recognizes women, recognizing democracy, the lens through which his heart works is that he wants to get his martyrs back. He wants to get back those that are part of the global and the domestic jihad in Egypt. And the Blind Sheikh represents some of that old tradition. If not, he probably has connections with him from old. She's not a youngster. He's been around for a long time. So they're sort of cashing in some chips early on to tell those that solidified their vote early on for them that they're behind them and they're going to work with them. And if we appease that, they will say we came, not only did we win domestically, but abroad we have broken down the West, and we will continue to move forward in the jihad, which is part of their Muslim Brotherhood doctrine.
We're speaking with Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, author most recently of Battle for the Soul of Islam, and he is the leader of the American Islamic Leadership Coalition. Tremendously important initiative. Zuhdi, very quickly, part of what's going on here, I assume you believe, as I certainly do, in terms of the Obama administration's enabling of the rise of the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, and most especially what it's doing to perhaps encourage its worst aspirations now that Mohamed Morsi is in charge, or at least in the presidency in Egypt, is a function of the embrace of the Muslim Brotherhood in this country by the administration. Give us a quick assessment of that, specifically the Council on American Islamic Relations, or CAIR.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to note that these changes in the Middle East are mirrored here. Muslims, including my family and others that come here, we have the same antagonism between Islamists and non-Islamists, but many Americans don't really want to see that. And most of the groups that claim to speak on our behalf are Islamists, and CAIR is primarily is the leading voice of the Muslim Brotherhood movement in the U.S. And thankfully, to pressure from Senator Kyle and others, the FBI prohibited through Mr. Mueller any interactions with them, but yet they've still been having some local chapters, such as in Connecticut in the fall last year, of the FBI that has been working with CAIR illicitly, if not openly. And at the end of the day, they can't even articulate why they shouldn't when they're pressed openly. You've got a CAIR leader from Chowdhury, who's from Connecticut, who wrote a piece in Alt Muslim basically saying that they push back against the FBI and they told them that if they don't meet with CAIR, then they won't meet with any Muslims. It's sort of all or nothing. And they're writing about this internally now openly, showing a brazenness that I think demonstrates that they have nothing to fear because the administration is not going to take them on. And that's why the work that Congressman Bachmann and so many others that have put forth recently asking for an IG investigation into the interactions with the Brotherhood is extremely important, because this ideology needs to be dissected not only by those of us in the think tanks and network, but in the government, because the infiltration. We just saw last week a study, the infiltration in the military. There's 100 thought operatives, if not 10 for sure, that are serious risks within our military where we should be screening them.
Amen. Zuhdi Jasser, we have to let you go. Thank you very much for these insights, for the important contribution you're making in the American Islamic Forum for Democracy and your new book, Battle for the Soul of Islam. Keep up the good work and come back to us again very soon.